is the Brain and Breath Connection. My name is Brooke. I am the founder of Musical Breathwork and a classically trained singer, as well as a beekeeper and a gardener and a Division I golfer. I've learned a lot about patterns, and I have seen something that I can just not unsee. And I'd love to take you on a journey of how this inescapable rhythm of our brain and breath is within us at all times and how we can work with it. What I'd like to present to you is this equation. And this equation, now that I see it and I've written it and I've been playing with it for a year, this is all I can see now. Even when I watch a movie, I notice how panic and anxiety is associated with how we breathe. As we go through this lecture, it'll make sense very soon. So the frequency of our brainwaves over the state of our nervous system plus the condition of our fascia equals the rhythm of our breath. What I'm going to show you over the next hour is that your rhythm of your breath can change the frequency of your brainwaves, as well as the state of your nervous system and the condition of your fascia. Now, if we start to condition our fascia and condition our breath, we can experience different brainwaves. I'm talking about consciousness in this talk, and I'm going to talk about the biological affiliation and connection to consciousness. And I'm not using this word in a pop culture reference. Let's go to Webster. Consciousness is defined as the quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. If we deduce that to a nice, neat little word, it would be awareness and perception. So we're going to talk about becoming aware and starting to perceive these tiny little things that are happening within ourselves. And for some of you, this will seem logical, and that's perfect. That just means that it's math, right? Math is logical. So let's start at the beginning, okay? Our brain oscillates 8 times a second between our inside chemicals and thoughts and outside reality. So 8 times a second, you are changing to the environment that is set before you. Now, think about the lighting in the room, the cars moving outside. Are you drinking a cup of tea? Many of us have sequences that we move through in order to tell our minds we're in a state of relaxation. It may be wearing our favorite robe or pajamas. It may be coming home and putting on our slippers. For some of you, it may be having a cigarette and starting to breathe slower. All of these sequences for us are to trigger our mind and body that we are now moving into a different environment. I like to use the pyramid as an example of these orifices of perception. So our consciousness takes in information from different parts of our body, from the fascia, from our brainwaves, from our breath and the rhythm of our breath, and from cymatics in our nervous system. And we oscillate between these different things and experience life. Let's get into that a little bit. So our awareness fluctuates. So go ahead and pick one of these optical illusions, whichever one you prefer, and try to focus on the very center of it. Now, it's been proven that your mind doesn't take in 100% of an object or 100% of a sound ever. We are taking clips of what exists, and parlaying it to our brain, and then going back and taking another clip. And in this oscillation, we experience illusion. This is just one example. Another example of how our consciousness, our awareness fluctuates is based on learning. So every time we learn something new, it can actually change our perspective. For instance, if you're not a musician, a gardener, or a painter, this is just drums, these are just plants, healthy plants, and this is just a painting of some pirate ships, right? Well, if you're a musician, that's a tom, that's a snare, that's a crash, that's a hi-hat. If you're a gardener, this is dill, rosemary, basil, and mint. If you're an artist, this has a slew of issues with shadows. So every time we learn something new, we add a new neuron to this big brain of ours, what we see and perceive shifts. Now, the same goes for the opposite, right? Our consciousness can fluctuate to a state of dullness. For instance, any of us that have experienced being too drunk or too high, right? Things become a little foggy or a little dull. Even if you're underslept, overexhausted, right? We may not be perceiving everything that's there. Or if you have 6 screaming kids in another room, you may have become a master at dulling out a lot of sounds. For those of you that go to music festivals, how do you feel on day 4? You can sometimes not even hear your friend yelling at you. For those of you that have been to silent retreats, how open and expanded are you to sound in that first word that you say? Or after 4 days of fasting, that first sip of juice, right? So we go in and out of our consciousness being very large or very small, depending on the conditions that we've set for it. Now, all of this is just to get me to the point. So at the beginning of all of our lives, no matter who you are or where you're from, this is how we all start. And at this juncture between sperm and egg, our brainstem is formed. Now, for those of you that don't know what the brainstem is, I am happy to introduce you. It is the first organ that's formed in our body, and it's right here at the base of the skull. Now, this is called the God zone. If they radiate this in surgery, we die immediately. It controls the natural and unconscious mechanisms that we need to stay alive. Now, as the brainstem is formed, our brain is like a flower, and our spinal cord is like the stem of our roots, okay? And as the stem of our roots, our spinal cord, grow out and turn into peripheral nerves, they touch stem cells, and then these stem cells form organs. We are grown from the inside out, much like a plant or a flower. Now, at the beginning of life this way, our brain and our skin are made of the same exact tissue called ectoderm. There are a number of other things made of this same tissue, but I just want you to remember the changeable nature of your skin. As often as it moves and is affected by hydration and sunburn, how it wrinkles over time, that is the same as our brain. Now, our brain is a collector of information. I believe our skin is just as important in that collection of information. So for those of you that haven't seen a brain before, this is it. It's a 2 to 3 pound pinkish organ made of namely 2 cells, glial cells and neurons. Now, in neurology, there's an interesting discussion about glial cells, and I will just leave it to this.